Now this next section, mouth honor. I want to explain that title that section 4 is mouth honor. That doesn't need to be explained, but mouth honor is a form of honor that is sheer emptiness. It's flattery. It's what Macbeth refers to, and I love a speech that I'm going to read from Macbeth. He makes reference after he, in his play in the 5th act, is pretty much done. His wife hasn't committed suicide yet, but is about to, and he's about to give his tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow speech. But he refers to mouth honor. And this section refers to empty rhetoric and hypocrisy and such. But Macbeth says, I have lived long enough. My way of life is fallen into the sere, the yellow leaf, and that which should accompany old age as honor, love, obedience, troops of friends I must not look to have, but in their stead, curses, not loud, but deep, mouth honor, breath, which the poor heart would fain deny and dare not. The first poem I'm going to read is actually a speech from my play, The Private and Public Life of King Abel, and it's King Abel's last radio speech. And King Abel is spelled A-B-L-E, but it's also because it's King Abel, who is a very able king, a very superficial, full of empty rhetoric king, who may have lived for centuries. This able king is also A-B-E-L, as opposed to the forces of Cain, which are in the play. In this is all kind of irrelevant, but it's background for this is just a radio address by the king, his little 3-minute radio address that he thinks he gives every week. Unbeknownst to him in the play, it never gets through because he's being taped, but the evil men that are watching him in the medical coats and so forth have control over the communication. So he never gets through to the people. But according to him, this is his last radio speech. All that being said, just listen to how this man talks. Good afternoon, royal subjects. This is your royal official self, His Royal Majesty, speaking to you once again from the royal palace. I love the sciences, royal residence. I remember as a royal boy how I loved them. Growing into royal manhood renewed my love and appreciation of these items. When I was a royal child, I remember how few scientists lived in the neighborhood. To be quite honest, I can't remember a single one. But by royal adolescence, we had 3 or 4 down the block. Today, royal contemporaries today, well, suffice it to say, there are more than I can count. Our queen and royal historian has noted our age as being highly innovative. That is not to say that there have been no mistakes, but we have learned from these mistakes. Our vaccinations are at an all-time high. Indeed, prophylaxis has become a household word throughout our kingdom. Yes, the days of bloodletting are over thanks to our medical friends. Some say our era began with the crossbow. Others say with the cannon, which came shortly after. But soon to follow was the machine gun, the airplane, and the airplane with machine gun attached. So who is to say? These gifts from our past, along with the laser beam and H-bomb, have given us complete control over our environment. And all of these things have come upon us so rapidly that we have no choice but to agree with the Queen that we are in the midst of what she has called the scientific revolution. For the first time, we, the human team, have the power to create as well as destroy. I am told the scientists are continuing to collect the data. The final results are not in as yet, but it looks like a good season for humanity. That's King Abel. Then I have a series of 3 poems in the Great Men series. I debated and I'm only going to read one of them, probably the most. Well, I'm going to read that one, but I mean no disrespect to Jesus. My Great Men series is doing the same thing in each poem. It's taking someone who I genuinely respect, have respected, a genuinely great man agreed on by our contemporaries, Freud in one case, Einstein, and Jesus. And it's taking, just to take, for example, it's taking how we commonly, as people, deal with greatness in our midst, and that is to reduce it to its lowest common denominator. So that, for example, with Einstein, the poem talks about a man showing slides of Einstein. He makes reference to him being the greatest physicist that ever lived, but it's important to him that he show that Einstein didn't tie his shoelaces. And he shows a series of photos making note of, oh, here he did tie his shoelaces. Oh, here he didn't. So that's the banality of how we deal with greatness. So in saying that, I'm taking Jesus Christ, seeing through the lens of the once famous psychiatrist Eric Berne, famous San Francisco psychiatrist, of games people play and ego transaction fame. You may have heard of Eric Berne. I actually met him when I was in the Navy, but he identified ego states that made it comfortable and easy to diagnose people in their communication problems. Parent ego state, if you're talking from your parent ego state, you're didactic and maybe a little bit obnoxious like a parent can be. There's the ideal adult ego state and the child ego state. So here's Eric Berne. Here's the Great Men Series 5, an analysis of the ego state transactions of Jesus Christ during the crucifixion. These are the last 7 words. Thanks to transactional analysis, and I give a credit here, transactional analysis, copyright 1958, Eric Berne, MD. Thanks to TA, we can now determine which ego state our Lord Jesus Christ was in during his crucifixion. When Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, he was in the parent ego state vis-a-vis man, and the child ego state vis-a-vis God. When Jesus said to one of the malefactors, Verily I say unto thee, today shalt thou be with me in paradise, he was in the parent ego state. When Jesus said to his mother, Woman, behold thy son, he was in the adult ego state. When Jesus said to his disciple, Behold thy mother, he was also in the adult ego state. When Jesus asked, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? He was in the child ego state. When Jesus said, I thirst, he was in the adult ego state. When Jesus said, it is finished, he was again in the adult ego state. And lastly, when Jesus said, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit, he was in the adult ego state. Are there any questions? And that's part of the poem. Are there any questions? Anyway. Moving right along, unless somebody has something. Are these poems upsetting anyone? Okay. Now here's one of my favorite poems, I guess you could say. And there's a lot to this poem that doesn't meet the eye. It's called Saying Goodbye to John Lennon. And I need to talk about this poem a little bit more than others in the sense that it depicts in its creation how I really began writing poetry. And I began writing poetry, I guess the first little poem I wrote was in '63. Breastfed time and railroad cars are out. Business is bad this year. And I just wrote that out. But my typical method was to write, starting in my Vietnam diary in '67 and later in what I called sentences and particles, fragments of things that I observed, fragments of ironic, strange things I'd read in the newspaper, strange little bits of something I heard on the radio. So that when I composed Saying Goodbye to John Lennon, and that title only came after I put these fragments together. What these are is a series of fragments, all of which, it's pretty certain, Some may be just imaginary, but many are actual statements that I collected in the year 1980. And you'll see why the year 1980, and particularly the dates mentioned, are significant. So this guy that's the persona of this poem is a kind of a two-bit hack radio announcer who goes in for the gossip. He's kind of intellectual and seems to know some interesting things, but he's just snide and cynical at every opportunity. And a lot of the stuff he says I actually heard, not him say, he's imaginary. Saying goodbye to John Lennon. This is Hollywood Today, and today is December 9th, 1980, sports fans. What's happening today with our off-duty stars? Well, John Denver is still hoarding gas in Colorado. Betty White continues to try and teach her neighbors to respect animals. Irma Bombeck is hiding her money in the cookie jar. Ha ha, isn't that cute? Dr. Kissinger is on a diet. Is that why he growls so? Orson Welles breathes sluggishly but profoundly, Susan Sontag proclaims, or Rex Reed. Werner Erhard is planting the bad-est seeds everywhere. Jane Fonda wants to build a better America. Or are they just cruising? By the way, we were just wondering, what does Gene Rayburn do with himself when he goes home at night? Joan Baez, always disappointed in her public, is asking you to, quote, analyze the flag salute, give up the nation state, share your money. Well, Miss Baez, that can work both ways. Give us some of your stash and consider if you would be happier in the nation state of the USSR. Erica Young doesn't seem to know where she's flying. Television could use another gymnast for Tampax. While the Reverend Jerry Falwell is articulating his God-fearing principles in Lynchburg, Virginia, area code 24514, the Reverend Robert Schuller confesses that he wears glasses so his vast television audience won't think he's effeminate. Guess what else? Pat Boone has a contract to sing gospel songs to the Ayatollah. He's such a nice man. Ronald Reagan persuasively promises his public with his fingers and toes crossed. He's such a nice man. Joyce Brothers, needing to vomit, refuses to pluck her eyebrows. Dick Cavett teaches his neighbors how to spell. Jack Anderson continues to spill the beans. Richard Nixon still likes to bowl. Remember, he's only 12 years old. He's such a nice man. As good as Oral Roberts or Liberace in their off time. But I digress. Grace Slick is co-hosting the Mike Douglas Show. Barry Manilow is growing long hair. Bob Hope is singing for Texaco. Helen Hayes is driven to perform for her audience, according to Judith Christ. Vincent Price will star as a mad scientist again, according to Judith Christ. Barbara Walters will cover the story, according to Barbara Walters. George Bush has been shaking his little fist. Dr. Thomas Gordon has problems with authority. Norman Mailer writes some more prose, which his critics call prose. Andy Warhol is right. We have a lot of champions in America. Arthur Janoff looks like Werner Erhard, who looks like Bert Convy. John Lennon was murdered last night in America. I'm not surprised. This is Hollywood Today. Let's go to commercial. That's meant to be a punch in the gut.
Each one of those fragments actually could be elaborated into another poem, right?
I hadn't thought of that, but
It's true.
Joyce Brothers needing to vomit. I know that makes no sense, but
But
she
I
always
mean, the
seemed, and
cookie
I love
jar.
Joyce Brothers,
I mean, but the cookie
but she always
jar
looked like she was
one,
ready. What? Go ahead. What?
but the cookie jar one could be
Oh,
fragmented into another poem.
I think you're right.
I mean, you've got the title for a lot of different
Oh,
poems
yeah.
right there.
Right. Yeah, thanks for that comment. Television could use another gymnast for Tampax. Could remember that commercial of that sweet little
Yeah.
little girl? What's her name? That was a little gymnast prodigy.
Rigby or
Yeah,
Rigby. That's Kathy
exactly. That's who that is. Okay, the last poem in this section, Mouth Honor. is the demystification of Henry Kissinger. And I'm rather harsh in this poem. I don't hate Kissinger. In fact, I have a lot of respect for him, but after all, Christopher Hitchens wrote a book about his being a war criminal, and it turns out that the people at the top who handle wars and stuff do really bad stuff, really sneaky stuff. And my focus is, well, I'll read the poem. The demystification of Henry Kissinger. Let's take a stroll down memory lane with a bon vivant, a Nobel laureate, a major player on the world stage. Polonius hides behind the arras. If Machiavelli advised that a good man must be bad in order to survive among the other bad men, then what must a bad man do? Polonius hides behind the arras. Whether it was teaching graduate seminars at Harvard on fungible morality, or writing the screenplay for Dr. Strangelove. Nein, Dr. Kissinger screamed. Who is Henry, a.k.a. Heinz the K? No, he is not the Antichrist, no. No, he is no pedophile, no. Yes, he is a jet-set swinger, yes. Remember ugly little Rumpelstiltskin? He could also spin straw into gold. Americans love their sick men a little colder than ichthyology. Nein, Dr. Kissinger screamed. Quote, power is the ultimate aphrodisiac, close quote. Remember ugly little Rumpelstiltskin? He could also spin straw into gold. Whether you are a good man in a bad place or a bad man in a good place, life can be fill in the blank if you are a whore. Heinz, spiel nicht an der Herum, spiel nicht mit deinem kleinen Wurm, a good German mother shrieked. Heavy on top, too much gray matter, hand as claw, unhealthy in his robes. Looking good on paper, this anonymous author, making a virtue of his particular vice, writes in someone else's blood. You can come in now, we're through killing. You can come out now, we're through killing. Come out, wherever you are. Where is Cambodia? Let's look on the map, class. Now let's ask our viewing audience. Oh, a little ass-kissing never hurt anybody. Moreover. But first let's define fungible morality. Très utile. If you prick us, do we not bleed? Nein, Dr. Kissinger screamed. Little anger in that poem.